Hello, everybody. Meet Matt. Matt is a college academic advisor. Basically, his job is to help students like Kelsey get through college. See, Kelsey's got a problem, though. She's a freshman, and she's struggling. You know, she's thinking about dropping out. She's having difficulty balancing what's happening within the classroom and what's going on in her personal life. Well, thanks to College Snaps, Kelsey's got a friend. So she's got a mobile app here. Now, College Snaps will help Kelsey get better connected to her advisor, Matt, and also more engaged in her college. Let me show you how this works. So College Snaps sends Kelsey important notifications throughout the course of the semester, like this one right here. So Kelsey, who's struggling and worried about her midterms coming up, gets a notification like this from her advisor, Matt. Midterms are next week. Rest up. You're going to do great. She says, okay. And periodically during the course of the semester, she's going to get other questions. Have you purchased all of your textbooks yet? Kelsey has not, so she's going to answer no to that. What that does is then give her a tip. Okay, she can see that. I answered yes to that. Hey, well, it's an important first step. She's staying on top of her work. Moving forward. Are you participating in any clubs, organizations on campus? She is not. She's disengaged, so she says no. I answered no. And it says the student organization fair is coming up next week. So she gets a tip saying, like, look, you should be getting involved on campus. And we know that this is an important measure of who might stay or who might go. Next, are you planning on dropping any of your classes? Kelsey's struggling, right? So she said, yes, I am planning on dropping a class. She wants to let Matt know this. And then it tells her, well, come see me before you do this, right? Don't make any decisions before we talk. Got it. And then finally, you're midway through your first semester. Are you satisfied with your college experience? Kelsey is not. So she answers no. Please come meet with me ASAP so we can figure out how to make this better for you. Okay? Kelsey also says, well, all right, I am going to let Matt know in a couple other ways that I'd like to meet with him. So she's going to compose a message. 140 character, Twitter style, make it short. I need help. Can we meet? Question mark. She sends that off. And she also decides to let Matt know that she wants to meet with him. And at the touch of a button, she requests a meeting. Okay. So this is a lot of data she has just shared. How does this help Matt, the advisor? Well, Matt has been on email all day long. In his inbox, he gets an alert. I need help. Can we meet? Kelsey's just sent me something. So he's going to hop into the College Snaps dashboard. When he gets in the dashboard, he sees all of his students, but he wants to check on Kelsey. So he types in and he sees that, hey, there's a message waiting from Kelsey. I know this. There's the message. In real time, he's getting these data from her. So he's going to say, I need to take action really quickly. I'm going to send her a response back. So he's going to type a message to Kelsey. Already he's interacting with her in a very different way than he's done with students in the past. So he fires off a very quick message. And Kelsey is going to get on her phone. Okay, and there's a record of it there. Matt might also say, look, I want to put her on my watch list. Right? She has answered some questions in a way that's unfavorable. I'm going to put it here. He can see then that she has now been added to his watch list. And there she is on the list. He might also want to check some warnings. Have other students answered questions unfavorably? And he sees that there are a number of other students that he's now going to have to reach out to. He might also want to check to see if he has any meetings. Kelsey's requested one. But what about other students? He sees that there are other students who requested meetings. Now, Matt doesn't have to go fumbling around and checking all the student responses. He can check a particular question's response. So if he wants to know about the textbook question, he can jump right in and see who said yes and no, very quickly, just like that. And he can decide, I now know I need to reach all these particular students right here about this question. Matt might also want to generate a report. He wants to export all this activity, all these new data he's never had before, into something else that he's working on. So how has this transformed the way he's doing his business? Well, completely. Before, Matt had to wait for problems to show up on his doorstep, for students to get the courage to go see him. Kelsey is providing information to Matt that he's never been able to gather before. He'd have to ask every student on his 300-plus caseload if they bought his textbooks. He can't do that. So for Kelsey, well, she's not going to drop out now. Right? She's got a connection to Matt. She's getting the help that she needs, and she knows what she's supposed to be doing next, getting information exactly when she needs it. Well, just imagine for a second the possibilities of being able to ask any question that you'd like as an advisor. Maybe you are on a campus where there's been a lot of binge drinking, and you need to ask this question right here. Do you know of anyone on campus who commonly engages in binge drinking? Right? Matt can take action on something like that. Academic behaviors. Maybe you're on a campus where it's very rigorous. So around finals time, you ask a question like this. Finals are a stressful time. Are you seriously concerned about anyone's mental well-being? Finally, rash of assaults off campus, things that happen for students, right? And you want to ask about what they're doing at the end of the night, after night out. You're more likely to walk home or take the shuttle. You know, you find out 75% of your students are walking home at night. You better do something to make sure that the shuttle is more of an option for them. So what's next for College Snaps? Well, some UI designs. So we want to be able to personalize a little bit more, add pictures so the student can upload a photo, and the advisor can also put a photo in there. Plus, we also know that not every question is a simple yes, no. So some of them need to be on a sliding scale. So the question that we asked before about being satisfied might not be yes or no. It might be somewhere in between. So what have we learned at this point? Well, a lot of things with our pilots. Timing's everything, particularly in getting students onto the app. So you have to find the exact entry point to say, hey, this is an app for you. It's going to help you stay in school, and you need to make sure whether that's at orientation or the moment students deposit at school, get them on board. And finally, students vary in the value they see in the app. So some students are saying, look, I'm tethered to this device, so anything else I'm doing and I can do on this phone is a bonus. Right? Other students are saying, look, it's convenient. I don't have to go find the info. It's sent to me automatically over the course of the semester. And finally, it makes them feel differently about the school. I'm not a face in the crowd anymore, and this guy who I never met or knew before now has a relationship with me and vice versa. What do we need? Well, we're looking to raise a round of seed funding to build some of the next design. You can find us on angel.co. Also, additional pilot sites. So we have a number of paid pilots coming up for the 2013-14 academic year. We're always looking for additional ones. And finally, an advisory board. We're both educators ourselves and have been practitioners, so we have our limitations around what we know we need. And we know that we want to find somebody with some education business savvy, knowing how to sell into schools, fundraising expertise, and then finally, as we redesign, somebody who's got some skills in that area. We are College Snaps, and we are solving the college dropout crisis. Thank you.
And what is 1776?
Oh, 1776 is an incubator in DC. We're a DC-based company.
Great. Raphael, what'd you think?
First of all, congrats on the progress.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the adoption process. So,
yes.
You know, we were investors in Yammer, and there's a lot of bottoms up, and that's a good example of going bottoms up. Do you need to connect with the registrar software or the LMS to get on board to make this work? And if so, or if not, is there seasonality to your business that you can mitigate?
Sure. So the answer to that question is no. We don't have to connect to be able to import data already from students, and also export, because a lot of systems are already taking data you're using somewhere else and in a convenient file like this, just taking it out of here and putting it there. So we can do that without having to integrate right now.
Have you considered expanding your market to large high schools?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that question, because we actually started on the high school side. I'm a former high school counselor, worked predominantly with students from low-income households, and I knew that there was an information gap, and ultimately we basically said, look, we want to make sure that there's a fractured pipeline of students going to college, and students are missing information. So if I could find a way to control for lack of a counselor, lack of a counselor who knows anything, I can make sure that students are getting information exactly when they need it. So we actually are doing a pilot, and Mitch is sitting here. We are actually working with the foundation side on the College Bound Brotherhood and rolling out to approximately 3,000 students in the Bay Area on the high school side.
So I have a product question. So
yes.
I know that there's this assumption that everyone has a smartphone, and I have a nanny, and she doesn't have a smartphone that works. She has like an old iPhone 3 and it's broken. So what about using SMS or email questions? I have a doctor who sends me this thing called a health loop. And so after I go see him, I get an email reminder and a text message pretty much every day where I have to check back in and sort of rate how I'm doing. I personally think that might be more effective. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so we actually started again with the concept of SMS because if we were going to capture students from low-income households, not every student at that, and this was about 2.5 years ago when they hatched the idea, students were even then way less likely to have a smartphone. So we started with that concept, and we are interested as we build out, making sure we're covering all the platforms so that students who don't have smartphones still have the ability to access this information. Now, as far as this versus that, we look at the robust nature of what you can do on a smartphone versus what you can do just SMS, as far as sort of the connections that you can make with your advisor and some of the capabilities there. We've just got a couple of features right now, but we think there's an ability to do a little bit more with that.
So you mentioned towards the end of the presentation that you had been in private pilot. So I would have loved to hear earlier in the presentation, like actual data from how many people have used it, what the engagement has been over time. Like I know the UX, when you improve it, I think my guess is the engagement will improve because the product did feel a little robotic and a little canned. And my guess is that might have negatively impacted engagement, but maybe I would be wrong, and I'd love to hear what you saw from the pilots. My second question, kind of comment or question is the target customer or adopter a college counselor, and in which case do they have to have budget to pay for this kind of thing, or what do they need to see for you to convince them to use the product?
Sure. I'll start with the first question around the design. So we've done some focus groups with students. Nobody's said anything yet about the design, even though the students are very upfront about things like that, because there's really nothing to compare it to for them right now. So in many ways, just the fact that there is this tool of sorts for them, they're just sort of intrigued by that and less focused on the design. I think more as we get users on it for a longer period of time, because we're just now sort of starting this rollout, that's something we definitely want to know and get a handle on. How can we make this better for you from an engagement standpoint? Stay on it and continue to use it. And your second question about who you're selling to, for us, our target is student affairs. So that's the department that typically houses people like Matt, who used to be an academic advisor himself. So we have been talking to them as a starting point. Sometimes we've talked to presidents too, then we end up there. And they do have their own budget around this. And in fact, a lot has been happening more where more dollars are flowing to them because when students leave school, they lose money.
Yeah. So I'm fairly familiar with this segment. Exactly. The main problem facing the universities now is as the dropout rate, the new loan guidelines mandate that you lose loans if they're dropout rates,
That's right.
which just cuts your revenue dramatically. So this is a huge problem. As with any huge problem, there's massive amounts of competition. And I'm just interested, I was looking up some competition that I know quite well and that are maybe started around the same time, possibly further along. What are your thoughts? This isn't a greenfield opportunity. There's definitely a lot of competition out there. So any thoughts or insights?
Sure. It's a great question. Student retention is not new, and colleges have been trying to solve that for quite some time, and there have been systems that have been built to try and solve this. But we haven't been able to solve it, and why? So that's the main question. And I would pose this question: why is cancer no longer a death sentence? It's because we're collecting.
I think it pretty much is a death sentence.
Well, doctors are able to collect data they've never had before that allows them to make, right? So ultimately for Matt, he's collecting data with our system that he's never had before. Because right now, the picture of students is largely quantitative.
So you're saying that you're going to have more data available, and that's
different
what
data.
Okay,
Yeah.
different.
Right, different data that completes the picture for the academic advisor.
Yeah, and I got a graduate degree in higher education administration. I started working in the field. I studied all this theory that I never used. So I said, this has to be good for something. Guys like Koo and Tinto and Aston didn't go out and do all this research and implement it for no reason. So I said, let's get it going, and let's get it going on a platform where students are already located. So we're on the mobile app. And if other companies are doing it, that's a good problem to have because it shows us it's actually a legitimate problem. And I guess we're willing to take the bet that the questions we're asking are that good.
I also want to take a question from the audience too with each of these. So anybody who's an administrator maybe who might actually use this, have any questions or feedback, just raise your hand and Karen will run to you. Any more feedback from the judges?
My quick comment would be just, if it is for the advisor, the dashboard, I was a little surprised kind of how the shallow the information was there. That's why the integration with the MLS, I would want to look, how well is this person doing? Are they about to flunk all their classes? So the dashboard just seemed a little bit, if I'm the advisor who this is the product for, I need a beefier dashboard.
I think you have another problem this could also be solving, because your best source of information on how kids are doing is other kids. And that's why I refer to the high school point, but I'm sure at the college level. So some of the information that you're asking students to give, you ask them to give information to other students, which I think they will, but there would have to be some type of confidentiality involved there also.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder, and maybe the educators who tell me or parents, is there an opportunity to go direct to consumer with amazing advisors? So if you're a parent sending your child to school, would you actually pay $500 to have an advisor who is just extraordinary to just check in with them every week and pay for that, $25 a week or something like that? Has anybody ever done something like that? A coach for college kids or a coach for high school kids? A mentor?
So coaching programs definitely do exist. So there are some programs out there that is their model. An actual person from outside who's making phone calls to students or connecting with students. So there's something out there for that, but I don't know how successful that is. When you're outside of the school, this guy right here is the one pulling the levers. So, unless there's some connection to the guy who knows the system, then I think there's going to be a disconnect there.
Great. Okay. We have one right here. Question. I think you'd say where you're from and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
My name is Michaela. I work for a startup called Applyful. And I went to college at MIT, and some of the advisors were involved, but for the most part, they weren't really. So have you talked to college advisors? Like, what percentage of them are really involved in their students' lives? Usually had to be very proactive to reach out.
I would ask the question, what is MIT's retention rate? And then to what extent do advisors at MIT have to be involved? And that's no dig at MIT. They do a great job at retaining students. But as someone who worked at a large public state and then also worked at a top 20 institution, I can tell you that sometimes on the latter side, there was more pressure on me to retain because if I did lose a student, it was really coming back on me. So different environments, but at the schools that we're most concerned about, these schools where the doors might be closing and they're actually thinking about that question, they're being asked to do a lot more than they have time to do right now.
Great. Okay, well done.
Thank you.